application is that 40 million to do weatherization plus discount for the mower.
I think that's.
Okay. Let's shut the door. I guess we'll go to live, please.
How much was it again?
3. Governor asked for 5. House lowered it to 3.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We are about to start. We're a little late this morning. Apologize. Senate Transportation Committee, and this morning our first item of business is S-113. An act relating to requiring gas stations and convenience stores to provide notice to customers of holds on payment at the point of sale. Chris Delio is with us from Mount Bankers Association this morning, so Chris, take it away.
Good morning, Senator. Good to be with you. First time this year. First time in a couple of years that I've had
You don't have that honor, right?
well, I'm honored. So welcome for the opportunity to come in and visit with you and try and provide some education on.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. Other people do.
Right. So Chris Delia, President for Vermont Bankers Association. I think probably the easiest way to address this is if you all give me your credit cards and debit cards this week, and I'll go to the gas pumps and you can see how it actually works. I'll get them back to you on Tuesday,
Yeah, right.
but you'll see how it works. So we're here to talk about what happens to the consumer when you're using a credit card or a debit card at the gas pump. Who has responsibilities for holds, who's all part of the process, how long do the holds stay on, et cetera. And I want to be clear up front. I know Matt's here representing the fuel folks. I'm not here to throw stones at anybody. I'm here to just tell you what the process is like. And there are multiple players in the process, and everybody has a little piece of it and a responsibility for it. So I think it's best to do this by example. If I go to a gas pump and I put in a credit card being very different than a debit card. A credit card is based on a line of credit that has been granted to me by some institution that's the issuing credit card. I put my credit card in. What I see often now at pumps is you either have to enter a PIN number or you push the button enter and it bypasses the request for the PIN number. If it's an American Express, they typically ask for your zip code. This is again to authorize that it's a good card and it can be pumped through the system. The message is sent from the pump to the merchant's processor or the fuel dealer's processor. It then goes through the card network system. It then hits the processor for the issuing institution, and it pings the account to determine whether that is a good account. The ping comes back to the pump, and it says, okay, I can go ahead and pump my gas.
That's why it takes such a long time. It says Capital One, for example, and then it's all that is happening then, as you described,
Yes,
before it's approved and.
correct. But it's not necessarily it's the automated clearinghouse networks or it's the Visa or MasterCard network. So it's not Capital One. They are the issuer, but they're working with the network system. That's all in between. So then I pump, and it's pinged because, again, they want to know it's a valid account, but they don't know how much I'm going to pump in gas. So at that point, the merchant with their processor requests that a hold is put on the account. The hold can be for $1, but typically the maximum.
How does the merchant put that on?
Working with their processor, they send a request through the system that a hold is placed on the end user's account.
Just have like an automatic number, like obviously 75 number.
Well, working again with their processor, the cap under MasterCard and Visa credit card rules is $175. That was increased in just the last couple of years because gas prices went up so dramatically. And you don't know how much a consumer is going to pump at the gas pump. But the hold amount working with their processor and the merchant is determined by them. I'll get to what our responsibility is toward the end. So the hold is placed on the account. It could be for $1, it could be for $50, it could be $100.
So most of us wouldn't even know that unless we're very close to our credit maximum.
Well, you're not going to know it unless it's disclosed to you and you are looking at your credit card and bank statements on a regular basis, and I'll answer your question as well. So I'll give you an example of how that works. I pump the gas, okay? I hang up the gas pump. Now another message is sent through the system that my transaction was for $50, okay? In a credit card system, a hold that that may be placed on an account is less of a problem because it's based on a line of credit. The problem is when you get the hold on the account when it's a debit card account that's tied to a checking account. A hold can be on that account for 2 hours. It could be on the account for maximum 3 days because it is waiting for that final transaction to be processed through the system. If it's processed through the system through the what's called the automated clearinghouse, it gets processed quicker. If it's not going through the automated clearinghouse, if it's going through the credit card networks, it could take 2 to 3 days. It also depends on how quickly it's being batched by the merchant and their processor. If it's batched immediately, then it goes through the system very quickly. If a merchant and processor is batching at the end of the day, then it's not going through very quickly. To your point, Senator Kitchell, if I were to open up my bank statement today, okay, pick my credit card, I would see if I have any pending transactions that are out there.
I never have that. I've never had it.
That's what this is, my credit card and the 5 charges I had yesterday that are pending.
Right.
I never knew that. I never have had that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's
So-
not, but then that wouldn't show on your monthly statement.
No, because your monthly statement has already been reconciled with all of the
Oh, well,
transactions.
I never go in on that.
Okay,
Oh, no
so,
wonder I've never seen it.
so the
But
impact,
it would go if, say, Senator Chittenden has 5,000 credit limit
correct,
and he goes to the pump
correct,
and they're gonna, and he only has
$50.
$50 left. He's
Correct.
at, you know, he's right up, he's only got $50 left.
correct,
Then it would reject
correct.
because he doesn't have enough.
He doesn't have the credit limit to deal with it. But
Okay,
if he's got 5,000 left in the account,
no problem.
no problem. But a big distinction between a credit card and
Card, 5 of them in one day.
We charge
I thought you were
everything.
supposed to be here working.
he's getting the points on his credit.
It's like you, he has other people that has his credit card
Yeah, it's true. My wife and I say, look,
Right.
would you like to go through my
No, you-
extension?
number. Let's put it up on the screen.
Yeah.
So, but what's happening is,
Buy more candy so that we're, have to buy new clothes.
the,
Jeez.
the impact is on his ability to spend against his credit limit on the credit card.
Uh-huh.
It's not against the money that's sitting in his bank account. It's a big,
I know,
that's the
I know,
distinction.
I know.
Okay.
I understand.
So now let's,
Because I have both.
right. So now let's talk about a debit card, okay? A debit card can be used in one of 2 ways. If I were to go into Senator Mazza's store, on his processing system, I'm gonna guess, when I put my card in, it's gonna ask me for a PIN, or let me rephrase that, it's gonna ask me if it's a debit or credit. If it's a debit, it's gonna ask me to put the PIN number in, okay?
On that, can you choose credit and then just treat that debit card as a credit card?
You could.
You can.
No, well, you could, it's treated as a credit card for the network that it goes through, okay? This is where the distinctions come into play. If it goes through a PIN-based transaction through his store or at the gas pump, it goes through the automated clearinghouse. That is a much quicker process to go through. The whole discussion still exists, and I know I need to get to the bank portion of it, but the whole discussion still exists. If I click credit card, it goes through the credit card network, which can be up to 2 or 3 days. Now, where does the bank hold come into this discussion? We get the request from the merchant dealing with the gas pump. Their request is a $100 hold on the account. That gets processed. The customer's bank, through their processor, receives that request. The hold is placed on the account by the bank, okay? That hold is going to stay there until the final transaction is processed. That's where you run into the situation where a consumer who has $100 in the account has a $75 hold on the account, has $25 left to play with.
They think they are.
They think they have 100. Now, if I go in to my bank account and look at that, I'm going to see that as a pending transaction.
So why,
And many people do that? No.
if the whole goes through immediately, why doesn't the actual charge and reconciliation go through immediately?
Because we have not received that from the merchant in their processing process.
Yeah, usually they batch it out at the end of the day.
I do
Right.
mine once a day.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I do it all in portion.
Right.
This morning before I left, I batch it out.
Oh.
Right, so we can't process the final transaction until it actually comes through the system.
So if they choose debit, does that go through the ACH or could, when they choose debit, still go through the credit card with the longer delay?
If they choose debit and put the PIN in, it goes through the ACH and it goes through quicker. Okay,
There's no batch process of demand, there's no,
because it's an authorized transaction to the automated clearinghouse. This is where you get into who the networks that are out there, who are the processors that are out there, but an ACH usually goes through quicker. It still may take till the end of the day for that to occur, but it's typically not 2 or 3 days that you're going to the card network. That's a difference.
does that ACH require the batch by the merchant to have?
The merchant still has to batch, right, regardless. And merchants can batch in a couple of hours if they choose to set it up that way. What is another piece of information, I help you with this, is this system is going to change probably within the next 3 months. The Federal Reserve in Boston 3 years ago started a process of creating a real-time payment system. Real-time payment system means just that. When I go to a merchant, once it's initiated and I go to a merchant and I swipe the card, that transaction is going to happen in real time. The transaction goes through, the money is taken out of my account, it gets to the merchant's bank in real time, and we're done with it.
So it gets rid of this hold and all that?
It's going to eliminate the slowdowns in the system that you experience today.
I have many people, they put the card in, and must be they punch, not the credit section, the other section, it doesn't go through, then they have to change it.
Yeah,
Or back and put it on their credit account.
Right.
That would happen.
Right.
They still have credit, but they have no cash.
Yeah, that's right.
and understand, merchant needs to get paid. They don't want to have a giant loss at the pump for somebody driving away with $100 worth of gas. So in part, that's the rationale for the request for the hold. The hold also is a fraud prevention measure to some extent. It ensures that there's adequate funds in the account to pay for that transaction. This is, and I should say on the FedNow piece, the rollout is going to occur. Banks and processors are working today with we have what are called core providers that stand up our core systems behind the scenes for processing transactions, et cetera. They've been working with them so that when FedNow goes live, institutions will be ready to go live with FedNow. Will every institution be there? No, but this is the standard that we're going to over a relatively short period of time. So if I'm a consumer and I'm at the gas pump, Matt and I were joking about stickers in the hallway. I've been at gas pumps where I've seen the sticker. Your bank will place a hold on your account. Call your bank if you're, got a problem. That's correct. A consumer can go in and pay with a credit card, a debit card. I just want $20 of gas. That's no different than a consumer going into the Senator store and buying $20 worth of
Yeah,
goods.
I don't have that key. Why is it pertaining to gas, not groceries?
You don't know what the final.
Because you don't know what the final sale is.
I see.
I would submit, if you've traveled and gone to a hotel,
Okay.
have you ever been told by the hotel or seen maybe a posted sign that says we're going to place a hold on your account because we don't know, even though you're booked for 3 days,
Oh,
I don't know what your incidentals are.
I see, okay.
If you rent a car,
They always put a hold.
they put a hold on your account until the car is returned because, well, I've got it for 5 days. Am I returning it with a full tank of gas? Am I not returning it with a full tank of gas? So they put the hold out there until the car is returned. So those are other instances where you might see a hold on it.
So I talked to a constituent that has had this problem with the hold, and what she said ended up doing is going in, because she figured out she doesn't have the hold, if she
Correct.
goes in, it says, I want this specific dollar amount.
Correct,
Or she uses her debit card, but says it's a credit card.
correct,
And she said that doesn't get the hold, that's.
Because it goes through the different process.
Correct.
It would take longer, but.
it takes
there's no hold.
longer, that's correct,
She's okay with it taking longer, because she knows how much it was.
right,
Because her problem is that she's
Right.
usually very close to her amount.
yeah,
So she thinks, okay, I still have $20, and then it gets to the next store and they say, oh, no, you don't have any money. She's like, "But this-"
but I do, right, she thinks she does.
but now she's figured it out, it's the gas station holds.
And what you brought to my attention, you as well, Senator, the $700 hold for 10 days
Yeah.
should have never happened.
Right.
There's something else there that we don't
Yeah,
know
that was a
about.
different constituent.
And I have no reason to doubt what they shared with you, but that's not, when again, talking with folks and looking at Visa and MasterCard rules, the cap's 175 and it's maximum 3 days, but typically less.
Like credit, rental cars, I've had to be, are they more than that? Seems like I've had a hold of,
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I rented a car last September, they placed the whole amount on the hold for my
So-
credit.
175 doesn't apply, or
Well,
in some circumstances.
I can't answer for the rental car facilities. I can only tell you in the context of this discussion, the 175.
Or they may actually hold for a specific dollar amount,
Right,
and you're agreeing to
right.
it.
And a car is obviously a much bigger ticket item than $100 worth of gas.
Yeah, I think it was like maybe a couple thousand or something.
Right.
with
You can
the
imagine
vans in
what
Ireland.
these credit card companies are making, seriously, the accounts they have. I don't see cash anymore in the store. I mean, it's crazy.
Right.
If I got that much cash, it's a big deal.
Banks, you think about it, the cost of even buying checks now
Buy everything.
discourage
It's
using,
expensive.
I
it's
spend-
expensive,
Yeah.
yeah.
It costs me
I mean-
$100 a day for my credit card fees. I have to pay $100 a day, not a big business. Imagine what some of these people, businesses are paying.
Right,
A lot,
so
thousands and thousands of them. I don't
Right.
remember what Marty
Oh,
thinks.
Marty, but oh my God, with all the gas and sales and everything else, he must, I bet he takes $300-400 a day.
So credit, right, I mean, the discussion of credit card fees has
Yeah.
come up sort of clearly at the federal level
Sure.
for quite a long time. You guys won't know this, but back in 2010, Senator Durbin got the Durbin Amendment passed and the Dodd-Frank bill, which had an impact on credit card fees. The fees pay for the system. In our case, the fees pay for fraud. Because we, under Regulation E, and Regulation Z, for disputed transactions and inappropriate charges that are challenged, we are responsible for those as the financial institutions.
You ever read the statement when you get your credit card bill, it says, if you pay the minimum, it takes like 9-10 years. I mean,
Right.
my bill the other day was like $1,100. They wanted $27.
Well, I'll share with you,
Yeah.
Senator and I have talked about this. My daughter and son-in-law buy the local general store in town last year.
Yeah.
Brand new to this industry. Have the same truck driver that delivers goods to the senator's shop. It's very interesting to learn about this business. But very few people come in with cash, to
Yeah.
your point.
Those days
It's
ago.
debit cards and credit cards. And people come in and buy a couple of bucks. They have a $5 minimum. But then there's people who come in because they're up at Smuggler's Notch in Jeffersonville. And people who come into the resort will buy $600 and $700 and $800 worth of groceries for the week. They go through Associated Grocers
Yes, AG.
for their processing.
Yeah.
And it's pennies on the dollar that they're paying. AG negotiates a good price with the credit card processing companies. There's a lot of processors out there in the market and there's competition. You've got to figure out which one.
Right.
They didn't go with their local financial institution because the institution could not compete on the price. AG was much better for them. And they batch every day like you do. And
I haven't looked at that. I gotta look at the AG. I haven't looked. at it.
they do well by AG.
Okay.
And there's also the premise that somebody going in and buying the soda
Yeah.
probably will buy a few other things
Yeah.
because they've got the debit card or credit card in their pocket
I don't know.
versus I've only got $5 of cash on me.
Yeah.
And I'm limited to the $5.
So on this, the bill, the stickers, so that, when we heard about this issue from the constituents, we found out that's what Connecticut does.
Yeah.
And that seemed like the only thing that we can do. I don't know if your opinion on if that's helpful.
Or is it gonna be mute in 3 months?
Or is it gonna be mute in 3 months, or is it not really helpful? Because nobody reads this. There's like a whole bunch of warrant, statements on the gas pump.
There are.
That's where this gentleman's gonna come in.
That's where Matt will come in.
Can we put Matt's number on?
And I said to Matt, it's a fundraiser for them if they sell stickers. I mean, you gotta raise some money, you sell stickers. The only thing I'll say is I've seen stickers at the pump. That's the only thing I'm gonna say. Whether it should be done or not, I come from an industry where disclosure is heavily required for everything we do. So I leave it to you folks. Again, it's not the merchant's fault, it's not the bank's fault, it's not the processor's fault. We're all part of this discussion. And we all set certain parameters throughout that process for reasons. And whether you choose to require a sticker at the pump for disclosure, I leave to you folks. Is it gonna be moot in a few months? It will be over time. Yeah, real-time payment system is gonna happen. And that's where the industry is going to go. So the pending transactions start to drop off your account because they're being processed right away.
I'm going to punt this to next session until after that 3 months to get more information. But my other question is the state of Vermont involved in any statute setting the cap of the 175, or is that really federally set?
No, it's set by the card networks at a national level. It creates a standard across the country. And credit card processing, debit card processing transactions, the rules and regulations are Reg E, Reg Z, Reg CC. These are all set at the federal level
You
with
probably want to
Treasury.
read those tonight.
Yeah.
Don't, Senator, don't do it, because mine was done after I.
You'll have a new bill tomorrow.
The last question I
Yes.
have is, so I don't know if this was clear, but would it be an answer to just not, and I'm not saying I want to do this, we'll preface that, but if we just didn't allow debit transactions for prepay at gas stations, would that, if it just forced all debit credit cards to be credit for prepay at a gas station, would that avoid and dissolve this issue?
I mean, on its surface, I think you're harming the consumer that way, because you're taking a choice away from the consumer.
What's the benefit to the consumer to choose debit as
Automatic. Yeah, you get the whole, but it goes through.
If the debit card with a PIN-based transaction goes through quicker through the automated clearinghouse. They could use the debit card and punch credit on the machine, and that's gonna go through slower. But I think,
But then it would only hold what the actual charge is, not an amount in excess of. what-
well, any hold drops off much quicker under the automated clearinghouse system
You're supposed to,
because it's being processed through that system.
or at least it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It seems like
Something,
it's every once in a
and
while.
every time you call up and do it on my phone on your account, it says something about in accordance with the disclosure form on the back of your statement, blah, 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 you are authorizing a payment of, in my case, $10 million because Nathaniel's bought something.
Okay.
It's a
Not quite
charge
that
from Uzbekistan.
I'm hearing two senators talk about their buying habits with spouses or family members, so,
You get the card unlimited amount.
okay, we'll
A Black American Express card, I don't know what those are.
a black one,
Those are for really wealthy people, right?
yeah.
Why would you even want, because so many merchants don't want to take the charge.
Yeah, and there's
But I can't
different,
refuse, I can't refuse it because people insure.
No,
You
but,
don't take American
no,
Express.
American
No, I
Express,
don't
no,
touch that.
because of, see, a lot of places don't.
Correct.
Liquor
There's-
store does, so I depend on what
It-
my liquor store does.
it depends, it's up to the merchant what they want to provide for flexibility to the consumer. MasterCard Visa through the automated clearinghouse is going to have a less fee structure versus going through the card network. American Express has a higher processing fee.
Yeah, they do.
So you see many companies, many businesses don't take American Express, they don't take Discover. I don't think Discover ever really rose to the level that others have. So,
Can I ask Mr. Coda a question?
Sure, yeah.
Are you representing the gas station or just as far as the gas stations that have their own fuel to, wholesale
So,
fuel?
for the record, Matt Cota from Meadow Hill, I lobby for the Vermont Petroleum Association, which is a division of the Vermont Retail Grocers Association. They're the companies that sell gasoline and maintain the pumps and the tanks at many convenience stores across Vermont.
Okay, so not necessarily the owners of the gas station, but the people maintaining the pumps and selling the wholesale fuel.
But sometimes it's one and the same.
Right, yeah.
So like an RL Valley or as Jolly or Irving may own the station, but they also own the pumps and the trucks that deliver the gasoline.
And do they have an opinion on S-116?
They would prefer not to put more stickers on their pumps. They're starting to look
What
like.
if they were colorful? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, that they don't see it.
Is it a big problem with your group? I mean, is this a big problem?
We don't have an it has not come to my attention as being a problem in terms of the holds on consumers. I will just say one thing, and my friend Chris can disagree with me here, but debit cards are preferred because there's a lower transaction fee to
Right.
merchants. So you'll see some merchants, whether they sell gasoline or whatever, ask their consumers to pay with their debit card because their costs are less. And in fact, some gas stations will lower your price per gallon by half a penny in order to encourage you to use your debit card rather than your credit card.
I've never seen a sign though in a business that says we prefer to use your debit card. That they ask.
It's really cash.
Yeah, if you go to the Jiffy Mart on Heinsberg Road in South Burlington, they ask, is this a debit or credit card? You say debit card, they say, we've just lowered your prices. And it dropped
Oh,
your-
really? I've never known.
Their cash is, 3 cents less a gallon.
It's equivalent, it's just taking cash off, it's,
I wondered, I thought there was a rule that gas stations, at some point, this was years ago, when they first started doing, it's like, if you buy cash, we'll give you a 3 or 4 cent discount.
10 cents a
per
gallon
gallon.
was
But I thought there was this thing like that was some kind of form of,
that's if you use the
Discrimination.
Irving card.
that you couldn't do.
not necessarily related to gas, but years ago, in this building, we passed a bill that gave merchants the ability to set a minimum
Right.
for what they would accept for a debit card or credit card transaction when somebody was walking in the door.
But there's no prohibition federally or state that says that you can charge differently based on the payment. Like give people that have cash a better price than those that have to use credit.
No, the payment fee structures are set up by the credit card companies. And Matt's absolutely correct. If I go debit and I go through the automated clearinghouse, it is less of a cost to the merchant versus going through.
Right, and cash is even less cost to them, so
There's
there's no
no cost.
encourage it, but there's nothing.
Well, I shouldn't say, there is a cost for having cash on hand and there's risk of, if you get
There's
robbed.
there's nothing against them from giving you a different price based on cash.
I will say, because we watched it shortly after that legislation passed, I don't very often see when I go into a merchant, a sign that says if I pay cash,
Right.
I get a
So
discount.
for a while I did, so.
Well, Skip Valley's got it, ever since Costco can sell gas now from 6 AM to 9 PM. Skip Valley has a sign in front of his maple fields. Cash, $2.23, credit, $2.30.
Cumberland
10 cents.
Cumberland Farms does it, if you use their credit card, they have
But
a
you
member
but you say
price
it has to be a
and
certain
a
card.
regular price.
I think there's an Irving card. And
Yeah,
that gives you
Irving does the same
Yeah.
thing.
So it doesn't mean,
And in
Right.
Hardwick, there is one gas station that pumps your gas and it has prices on their cash or
Okay.
card.
And you're talking about Irving or Cumberland, you can get a branded credit card that is issued under that company's brand. So you can have an
Like the
Irving credit
Irving
card, or,
card.
yeah. I could have if they did it, a Vermont State College's branded card, if they wanted to get in that line of work. So that's common in the marketplace as well, that branded credit cards.
yes, go ahead.
The reason that Cumberland or Irving can do that is because they are saving on transaction fees by putting in your ACH in your checking account.
Right.
So they're passing that savings along. There's no prohibition on suggesting a preferred payment method. There is on saying, because American Express has higher processing fees, we can't charge a surcharge if you decide to use your Amex rather than your.
But you could refuse to accept the Amex.
Yes,
A lot
you
of
could-
places do.
Yes.
But are you,
You could refuse to accept all credit cards, just be a cash business.
Yeah.
You wouldn't let survive all.
Right.
so I guess if it's a price, the difference between cash and credit, it's not a surcharge for the credit, because the credit, that extra price is really the charge of the credit card company, not the merchant.
Well, keep in mind
The
that
merchants are
we
charged for the
do,
transaction.
Right, so the money's going to the credit card company, not to the merchant. So the merchant can say, well, the credit card's charging me 2%, I'm gonna charge you 2.5%. They can't do that.
but let's keep in mind, I could go across the street to DMV. And I recall that if I was going to use a credit card, they would charge
They
me
charge.
a processing
They
fee
do, a lot of people do it.
versus if I pay with cash. So we do have the ability in Vermont for people to say, I'm gonna put an extra 1% or 2% or 3% on if you are using a credit card for processing fees or debit card.
Yeah, there are
Versus
places,
cash.
there are places that we don't want cash, car dealers. If you walk in with $10,000, they take it per car. They want.
Well, and look, I mean, buying $10,000 worth of goods, there's gonna be a processing fee associated with that. And I'll blame the merchants if they don't wanna pay that.
So even though it might say it's a reduction for the cash price, you could also see it as a surcharge for the credit price.
So this
Okay.
bill, who introduced this bill?
Virtually didn't do
Oh, you do. Oh,
But-
I should know.
Half of the duo said it needs to be deferred in light of the.
I'm okay with that too.
Oh.
I just had it, when the I had two constituents bring it up to me, it seemed like a concern. We had this one, $700 hold.
Oh,
But I don't know if maybe the son was driving a large truck that, because I can imagine if you're filling up a dump truck, it's gonna be over $175, so I don't know.
So do I hear that we're not taking this up this year?
Yeah, I'm okay with waiting.
Alright,
It could stay on the wall for next year.
Okay.
it seems like the federal
Right, might get.
effort
Yeah.
is kind of preempting.
Yeah, and I'm happy to come in next year and give you an update on where that stands and if we're hearing anything.
Bring
more
any
about it.
samples in or anything? You don't bring samples.
My printing machine broke down this morning, so I don't have any
There's no
hundreds.
credit cards you pass out free.
I was trying to get yours early. I don't have any free ones.
Only advice I would give to people who travel is get 2 debit cards. So you've got a backup. Sometimes you go to an ATM in a foreign city and the ATM won't accept one, but would accept the other.
They take credit card though?
If you want to withdraw cash as opposed to a loan, then, because I was in Rome and my ATM card
Wouldn't work?
I emailed the bank and said, what's wrong? And they wrote back that I didn't have any sufficient funds in my account. And it was like, how can that happen? And I only had the one on the one bank. And
You knew there was 3 million in there. So.
well, the funny thing is, it was property tax time and somebody's check got debited of almost 10,000 got debited on
Against
my
your
account. And I had, a few thousand after paying my, for travel. It was like, how can that happen?
Right.
And when the checks got processed, half of the check was my name, the other half was somebody else. I couldn't even read the signature. And so it was showing that I didn't have any money in my account.
Did they correct it quickly?
Well, after a few, and I couldn't pay, they have, in Rome, you have to pay, or this hotel, I had to pay cash,
Yeah, for
Per
the
night?
local tax.
a local tax. I couldn't use my credit card.
Right.
And so my access to cash was like, so 5 hours later, I got a note saying, oh, when my son went down and said, check this account before I put this much money on it.
Yeah.
And that's when they discovered it. So
Next time you go to Rome, I'll go with you and make sure
the
that.
next time I got 2 debit cards from 2 different banks so that I've got backup. It was like, what am I gonna do here? And fortunately, it was in the
You don't
time
carry
when you had,
cash with you?
not that
You-
much.
Typically, you'd want to get it when you're over there because you get the best exchange
You-
rate.
then
when
you're
you
getting
go through
euros.
there.
Yeah. So the only thing I can tell you is there are times when one ATM card won't work, so don't spend an afternoon in Rome finding that you're down and out.
Good advice.
Okay, all right, I guess we've covered this issue.
So do you have two?
Senator Kitchen,
What's
what's
up to cards? Yeah.
Two or three?
would you like to beg in Rome?
It's pretty easy. ATMs all over the place.
Well, thank you for.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I could have probably used a credit card, couldn't I? But it would have been, no, I wouldn't.
Not to pay the tax. They won't take it.
No,
You gotta
no.
have cash.
No, you have to use, yes, cash.
Okay, let's get
Thank
back, let's get back to the bill then. We'll take care of Senator President, Senator Chip this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, learn something new every day.
Introduce the bill, it generates a really good discussion, education.
You've had a lot of discussion.
Oh, my God. Yes, good morning.
Good morning. How are all of you?
Well, we're gonna get on subjects we understand better. I hope.
We're on
We are where? We are on page 39, is that correct? Or-
So yesterday, when your alarms went off, I had that we were talking very briefly, Senator Shipman and I, about the repeal section and the request for the prior iterations of session law, and then the alarms went off.
So on that point, if I may,
Yes.
I sent an email last night at 10:24 PM asking 2 questions,
Why
and
would you send an email at 10:44?
43 minutes later, I got back a
Let
comprehensive,
me ask you a question.
well-drafted,
Why would you-
thorough research.
Why would you do that to someone at 10 o'clock?
I didn't think she'd respond, but I thank you.
You
And
know,
it's just
you know,
remarkable.
You get done at 5 o'clock at night. Chip.
I was wrapping up my day, and I'm sorry. So
No,
thank
it's
you.
totally okay. If I didn't want to respond, I wouldn't have
Yeah.
responded.
You were over an apology at 10 o'clock.
I did.
You had a weird
You know,
That's why I did. My apologies for emailing.
We
you.
have been chastised for imposing
Yeah.
on staff's
Take
lives
your computer
after hours and
6
on
o'clock at
weekends.
night, Throw in the
Well, I
closet.
think that's only if
Emailing
we,
you in the morning.
And so you need to say, do not respond until
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Right.
In all honesty, what I would have done was I would have written the email and I would have just hit send this morning. So then you would have been like, why did she?
Well, I'm sorry I had to never do that. to you. That's very-
You do not need to apologize. It's
Sorry,
fine.
emailing in the morning.
I could seal that thing up on them at night. He lives in that thing.
So I think you're good with the repeals. I don't think there were any requested changes to the programs that were going to be codified, so that would be section 14. And then that's gonna take you all the way to page page 35. And this is where you're getting just the language as an amendment for last year to the T-bill, where it said that there were these large authorizations, like the $12 million for the incentive program for new PEDs. And it said it could be used for this program, and then adding in, and this is on line 18, and you'll see the same language repeatedly,
What
And
page
so-
is that? I'm sorry.
page 35,
35.
line 18, and subsequently codified in 19 VSA chapter 29,
It
just to
allows
make
the
it
money to
clear.
move forward.
Exactly. So you'll see that 3 times for the 3 programs. And then that gets you to section 16 and 17, which are the electrify your fleet program and the e-bike incentive programs. And those are the 2 that are going to be in session law as opposed to codified law. And based on testimony that you had on, I guess it would have been Wednesday,
We should have an amendment that does.
yeah, and I think Mike printed it for you yesterday, and it's posted on your committee page for yesterday. It's gonna be 4 pages. And then Mike, you want me in and I'll share it? It'll say electrify your fleet proposal in the top.
Right.
So the discussions that you were having in your committee on Wednesday were around how you could go about getting, and I'm gonna get the phrasing wrong, nonprofit mobility service organizations larger incentives, because the way that the incentive programs are structured is under the incentive program for new PEVs. the incentive amount could be up to $6,000 per vehicle. And that's up to, it might not be 6,000, there's some flexibility for the agency. But the incentive amounts under the Electrify Your Fleet program are capped at, it is a $2,500 incentive. So what this language does is it says that for 5 of the 20 incentives that any entity would be able to get over the lifespan of the program for the Electrify Your Fleet program, if the applicant is a nonprofit mobility service organization, it would be able to get up to 5 incentives at a larger amount, and that amount is not specified. It would be tied to whatever the amount that was available for the individuals with the lowest income getting a battery electric vehicle under the incentive program for new PEVs. So what you have here is just a modification to your summary section to specify in the summary of the Electrify Your Fleet program.
So that's it's not up there, sorry, this is, can tell us what, the B is the summary section?
Oh, yeah, it's section 2.8B. So what you saw yesterday for the Electrify Your Fleet program in section 2, it would be just substituting these lines 4 to 10. And the addition would be saying, including a limited number of increased
That's the
incentives.
emission reduction summary.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then within the program structure itself, and this is going to be on page 2, you'll see for subsection D, specifying or sort of reframing what the purpose of the Electrify Your Fleet program is. It looks like more is changing, but a sentence moved, because one of the things that Community Rides Vermont has said is, well, we're not replacing something in our fleet. We are making the conscious decision at the outset to build an electric fleet, and just making it clear that the purpose of this program is to either swap out vehicles in a fleet that otherwise would have been replaced with an internal combustion engine vehicle, or to avoid the purchase of vehicles other than a plug-in electric vehicle for a motor vehicle fleet. So Community Rides Vermont.
Where's the order?
On line 7. So it's saying the Electrify Your
Or avoid.
Or,
yeah. So I think that is just a technical clarification on what the intent of the program structure was. Substantively, where you're getting the different approach for, and I'm going to skip subdivision 4 for a second and then go back to it, where you're getting your different approach for the nonprofit mobility services organizations is in subsection E. So this is the subsection that would apply to the nonprofit mobility service providers, and they wouldn't fall under subsection D. So they would get, and this is in subdivision 1 on line 14, up to 15 $2,500 incentives that are available under subsection D on a first come, first service basis, provided that all the requirements of subsection D are met. And then for purposes of the 5 increased incentives, it would be notwithstanding D1 and 2. And what do D1 and 2 say? D1 and 2 say that they are incentives, that it's got the 20 incentive cap. They have instead a 15 cap and a 5 cap. And in subdivision 2, that's where you get that there's the limitation of it being a $2,500 purchase and lease incentive. And those incentives can go to more than just a battery electric vehicle. These 5 incentives would just be for battery electric vehicles.
I thought we were also trying to give them access to the $6,000
Right, so it's
incentive, so
up to $6,000.
where's,
And
where
it's
the
not-
line is that?
So it's not gonna say anywhere up to $6,000 here. Instead, it says, and this is on lines 20 to, on page 3, line 20, saying that the, line 19. At the incentive amount available to individuals who purchase or lease a battery electric vehicle or who qualify for an incentive under that. So it'll link back to that, and then it's going to be something that'll need to be done in the program guidelines, where whatever the then incentive amount for the up to 6,000 amount is, it'll then need to be transferred over. So the 2 programs will track each other. And I don't know,
You know,
If it will
lowers
be
the
successful.
MSRP to 55.
Yeah.
60.
that's the other change. And I think part of the incentive, or part of the justification there is the reason why,
Does it buy vans and stuff?
Yeah, but not, they won't be as high of a cost, so 55 instead of 60 for.
yeah, and I've been on email correspondence, I can't speak for Community Rights Vermont, but I did get an email from Chris Cole saying that they were good with this.
Yeah, and I assume AOT is. So yeah, I heard from both Sue and Chris.
And the one other thing that I want to mention, because it's new and it's highlighted, and you'll see that there's this language in subdivision 2 where it talks about the fact that those nonprofit mobility service providers still need to meet the requirements of subdivisions D3 and D4. D3 requires a showing that the incentive will be used to electrify the applicant's motor vehicle fleet. I think that'll be an easy one to show. But then D4 is new. This applies for all incentives under the Electrify Your Fleet program. And this came up in discussions about whether or not there needed to be a utilization of the tax credit piece. And this is not so prescriptive as to say you need to go and get your federal tax credit that's available under the fleet incentives there, but saying that the agency has the ability and the discretion to require any other requirements that they're implementing across the program. So not just for the nonprofit mobility service providers, but that's designed to try and fully capitalize any other incentives that are available. And that could be utility incentives, it could be the tax credits on a federal level, and that is within the agency's discretion to do across the program.
Great. I'm all for it.
Seems like it's what we thought made sense, yes, 2 days ago.
It's always the hope when I come in with language.
Right, and thank you for being part of the email changes, same with AOT, thanks for figuring out a way to fix it.
I definitely support it as well. The question I got asked in the hallway, I'm just kind of understanding this, is only 500,000 capitalization for this. If this caps out pretty quickly, we can still adjust the budget adjustment in January. But you wouldn't have any flexibility before that if this took off. You just have to wait to do some adjustments. Okay. The other one has 12 million, this just has 500,000.
And it has 9 million-ish now. So that was 12 million, it was added a year ago.
And this is, I mean, it'll be 20, even if they were 5,000, that would be 100. See 100 incentives between now and.
When they start up the program in January.
But 7 organizations maximized with all 20 cars, that it complete the whole 500K, but we're.
It would, but that would be a good problem to have, yeah.
Okay, so I'll add this to your next draft.
So the central garage, that one's taken care of, this, the fleet's taken care of. Getting rid of the database language that we didn't, that was a problem. And the green signal lamp.
I have,
So, you introduce that, Sarah Martha?
Yeah, I think so.
so it's with the editors now, but I have some modifications that I ran by the agency for the green signal lamps and the bicycle safety piece for the green signal lamps. And I can share this language, even though it's
These
not.
all members of assumption.
No, they're from you, aren't they? I thought the green signal lamp.
I'm done.
Your name is on here. It's yours, all these two.
We did those yesterday.
His was central garage and database.
Yeah, nothing more.
Those are done, we agreed to those. I thought, what did you say yesterday about the green light? I thought you wanted to wait on it.
I thought you wanted the green light, the green light.
I don't want to disagree with the agency of transportation. This one here, I would like to, have more information. I'm a little nervous about it, like,
Wait for more states.
or something. I don't know what the answer is. It hit me cold turkey, but someone else might have, I don't want to push it through, it's too long.
Green light task force.
Yeah, I don't.
At least 10 legislators.
I just, I'm just nervous about that. Why, I don't know. I don't understand the message you have to send out there to tell people. And I know they got message boards and everything, but to inform people that green means what? Go, stop, be careful. I don't know. It's not a meeting for me. I'm nervous on green. I wouldn't be nervous on blue or amber naturally or red or something. But green is green. You made this.
What about chartreuse?
Yeah, any color, pink, I don't care. I like purple.
I like the disco ball, the cover ball.
I hate to voice my opposition for the Secretary of Transportation, Joe Flynn, but I don't know, it's just, I
You're
would
just
have
not
a difficult
ready.
job, it's not very prime time, I would have a difficult job defending it on the floor of the Senate if I was one to report that.
I think
So I don't want
on the agenda.
Go ahead, let's open up for discussion, whatever you want to do. It's fine.
to,
So what is your proposed draft?
Oh, I was just gonna say I had added to the end, which is only a relevant thing for you to talk about if you want to go forward with it, but that you wanted to include something to get at the oscillating piece. So if you want to put in anything on green lights, this is what I think would capture the desire there. I'm gonna put it up.
I'm with Chair on this. I don't want to move this forward. I'm not ready to defend on the floor otherwise, but I do like that if it were to continue to converse on, I want it to oscillate both frequency of green and with another color.
Wonder when it's all said and done, it really basically gets down to that the public is starting to glaze over on all these lights. And how many lights are we gonna have before we're done? I mean, doesn't it really get back to the public's responsibility to be attentive on the roadway?
Well, I wouldn't know what the meaning would be for a green light. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean go, pass it on the left or pass it on the right? We'd have to educate the public and not everyone drives on roads that the education is there to read. I don't know, it's just.
So if we don't move with a green light,
Then
by
you
going
don't.
back and looking at the statutes, it didn't indicate
What
that
do you
they
have
were
here?
actually, it's saying that they, in accordance, so that the oscillating lights, that isn't permitted, it's just referencing best practices.
So if you don't want green lights, you don't want this language either. You just want to scrap this whole proposal. So this was just in response to the committee discussion yesterday about saying, if we're going to go forward with this, then. However, you also were talking about bicycle safety, and I have modified language for
So
that.
then what we're basically saying, people aren't comfortable moving forward with the proposal for green lights at this time. So that whole thing,
Mhm.
we are just saying,
Not included in the bill.
don't include.
So in the 4-page document you have of the 2 proposals from the agency, you are not moving forward with section X and you are not moving forward with section Y, but they are written and they can be looked at a future date. And if you ask to look at them at a future date, I will make sure that it includes this and in accordance with industry accepted best practices language.
there's not what's the acronym, I don't have it memorized like you did, the universal code on signs.
MUTCD.
That they don't have, there's nothing on this about the variability of the flashing and all.
I did not look, but I don't think it addresses
I think
signal
you should,
layout.
this tonight after 10:30, read.
Yeah, maybe Tom can send you a reminder.
Did the House have any discussion about this green light?
No.
No, unfortunately, this came to my attention after the bill had come out of the House.
Okay, thank you.
Which Shaw could be a champion. He loves colored lights. Well, I mean, I feel like we're getting ahead of him a little bit.
Yeah.
Next year.
Next year, you know.
We'll be there.
Or year
Okay.
after.
Okay, you also talked yesterday about the agency's proposal for bicycle safety, and there was a desire to have it address more than just bicycles, the other
Right.
e-bikes and scooters and things that are on the road. So this is changing basically anytime you saw the word bicycle before safety, it's changing it to micro mobility. And it's adding, as used in this section, I came up with it, that's what the internet tells me these things are called.
What things are we talking? Oh, this is
Bicycles, electric personal assistive mobility devices, that's a segue. Motor-driven cycles, which includes scooters and motor-assisted bicycles, and all of those terms, bicycle, electric bicycle, EPAMD, motor-driven cycle, and
Pretty
motor-assisted
well
bicycle
covers everything.
are defined in 23 VSA Section 4.
We actually have, I see people with motor assisted wheelchairs. They're kind of like a scooter, but,
I think it would probably fall under the definition, depending on like wattage and things, under motor-driven cycle, which is a pretty broad definition.
I see those going down Dorset Street all the time.
And they have a flag oftentimes.
So that's what micromobility would be for purposes of this, and there really isn't much of a change in terms of what the agency is being tasked with doing. They would be developing a comprehensive micromobility safety education program. It would be looking at efforts to increase safety for individuals that use roads, sidewalks, corridors, and paths in Vermont, making it a little bit more obvious that it's not just on highways, on like the roadway. And then what they need to report back on is the oral report on the program design, recommended modifications to current efforts to increase micromobility safety, and then recommendations for any statutory changes. And you'll be getting that in an oral report form on or before January 31st of 2024. So I don't know where the committee was going, but I know that there was an interest in it not being so bicycle specific. And this is an attempt to have it be
This
less
really
bicycle.
addresses the concern I raised.
That said, I'm okay with it, but that it's not bicycle specific, but I want it to be bicycle focused, you know what I mean? I would want the AOT to spend a lot of time trying to educate people about the
Right.
motorized skateboards, because there's 2 people that use them.
My
so-
interest has been on
I mean, that's where
bicycles.
all
I mean, that's where, not that we disregard all the others, but I think bicyclists, to me,
Yeah.
that's the growing population, big time. I can't tell you how many people have told me recently they bought a bike or electric bike, or so yeah, they're gonna grow with the incentive program and,
In particular with students, and that was part of the plan that we heard, that working with the organizations that could get in schools. So,
I think, may I?
yeah, go ahead.
Michelle Boomhauer, Agency of Transportation. I think it would be nice so that any of the other stakeholder groups in the micromobility category, I just understand the legislation to be focused on them more principally than bicycles, with maybe we could say with an emphasis on bicycle safety.
Right. I would like that. There's not much time and money to do it, and since bicycle safety was our main concern.
Got lost.
No, that's right.
Right, I spent a lot of time on scooters, you know, it's a problem, but it's
So
not. the main-
it's growing. It's really gonna get bigger and bigger. If we're pushing to have people use bikes for work and everything we're adding to this, to me, it makes sense to put a strong emphasis on bikes. But
Today's
I
Friday.
think the day of the
Yes.
Segway is not,
I kept thinking this morning, like at 3:30, oh, it's Saturday, I don't have to get up.
you were up at
so
3:30 this morning?
I didn't get up.
I know I was.
Oh, it's, have
Her and Tom were texting.
Yeah.
you got that email in?
Yeah.
No, I was,
Do you want to make sure, that, hey, did you get that,
I don't think
empty a pipe back? Yes, I'm here.
Emailing at 10 o'clock at night.
I'm trying to, I can't forget to put that in the, I gotta deal with that in the budget.
Oh,
Oh, somebody's
sure.
got money on that.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh,
Okay, so then that's gonna be a good segue for bicycles, back to your bill. You were going to be on page 30.
30, you said? Oh,
I started talking,
Oh, okay.
38.
There you go.
So these are changes that you've talked about and seen in theory.
Yeah.
But what you're doing for the the e-bike incentive program is instead of going with what the House had for the range for e-bikes being 800 to
we got rid of that.
4,000, you got rid of it. So now it's an MSRP of $4,000 or less. And I think that that was something that you had additional questions for the agency on with that change.
What, before getting rid of the 800?
Yeah.
Well, if you could get one for 750, that's good. Why would we require, I don't know. That was our concern that.
Trying to benefit the least of,
Yeah.
most inconsiderate individuals.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, for the record, Patrick Murphy, Agency of Transportation. So that minimum amount came out of discussions with House Transportation, where there was a desire to have a voucher-based system. So in order to implement a voucher-based system where someone would apply, they'd be approved for a certain amount, that would be applied to a prepaid mobility card, it becomes then difficult to structure something where there's where it's based on the percentage of the eventual sale.
So 800 came from where? We could make it 700. If what you're saying is they need to have 50% of some amount?
You could, we set it at 800 because of what we saw from the data from the prior iteration of the program, and because most of these bicycles are going to be $2,000 or more. So, you know, when you get into the sort of levels of subsidy, it made sense to provide at least a minimum amount, but you could certainly structure it differently so that there's a 700 minimum or whatever.
Why? Because it's going to be a percent. Can you explain why why the House felt they needed to have a minimum? I mean, obviously you're having to calculate a percentage of any amount between that band, right?
So,
Or is the
Initially-
incentive the same regardless of whether you have a $800 bike versus 4,000? I probably could read this.
so initially, when we first implemented the program, we put those percentage caps in place because the current concerns of this committee that we wouldn't be incentivizing bikes too much, that you know, we wouldn't be paying almost
Well, it doesn't-
entirely for.
It doesn't help the environment unless you're gonna use it for work. That's been my,
Sure.
we're not replacing a gasoline engine bike with an electric bike. That always been my concern. I know we're trying to get people to use them for
That's
work.
why B is so important, because we did add a conditioning to try to do just exactly that, as opposed to buying an e-bike for someone for recreational.
That's recreation.
So this is shall be used in a way that reduces gas emissions as such as substitutes for a trip. So that's on page 39, and I think that language is what,
Is that what's up there now?
yeah.
Yeah,
is-
lines 12 to 15.
would help us be more directive.
So let me ask you a question. If someone goes to buy a bike and they say, are you gonna reduce greenhouse gases? And you say, well, I might use it to go to work occasionally. Does that qualify? Does that say that they use it once a year? That's helping the emissions, or that would be my question. How do you enforce it, or not enforce it, but have some guidelines on where you get your incentive? If you say, if the answer is occasionally I might use it to go to work, does that qualify?
So
I'll
there's,
just, can I jump in on the drafting piece? This language is having it be like a voucher, so you can't go to a bike shop and just say, hi, I'm here to buy a bike now without having gone through the process that the agency has.
Okay.
And Patrick can talk about the agency.
Oh, okay. Oh, they have a request.
Yeah, they have to,
Oh, okay.
they have to self-certify.
like anything, it's gonna be some sort of self-attestation,
Right.
that you're checking off. This is primarily.
The honor
for-
system, yeah.
But one of the things that we structured, or we advised that the House structured this a bit differently, is to focus on households with lower incomes. The data that we saw from the survey work that we did was that the lower income households are clearly using it more for specific transportation needs versus recreational purposes. And so,
So there would be
and that's,
income based.
so, yeah, instead of keeping, so that the first iteration of the program reflected the incentive program for new PEVs, those guidelines, both the low-income households and moderate-income households. And what we're saying is, let's just instead focus primarily on households with lower incomes, because that's who are really going to be using bikes more explicitly for transportation needs. And so we'll learn from this next iteration whether that has helped to focus the funds in a way that the committee and others intend. But logistically, the reason for a minimum rose out of the committee's prior concern about limiting the incentive amounts for a particular bicycle. So if you had a $500 or $600 bicycle, we wouldn't be providing $400, right? You know, 2/3 of the bicycle. So logistically, a voucher system that's determined beforehand, it's not possible then to kind of place that amount onto a card that people will use later.
It's a set amount for the voucher. And you,
So in the language, there is not a set amount in the voucher, and this is one of the few programs where there's not been you set the incentive amount. One of the things that this committee decided to do last year was to shift away from prior versions of the e-bike incentive program language, which said it was a $250 incentive. And the agency in its implementation has done a percentage with a cap.
so this doesn't, I think what we're struggling with is incentives shall be provided. You've got some flexibility. How do you envision determining the amount of them? Now we've said, we want you to direct it to the people who need it the most, who in fact are going to be using it for the purposes that we intended. And we're kind of, they've got to acknowledge that it's a substitution. So how do you envision the calculation of the voucher up to that? And obviously, we have the uppermost cap that we're not going to provide for very expensive bikes above the 4,000. So I come in and I'm at I don't know, 200% of federal poverty. Tell me how I would meet the income test. Tell me what my voucher would be. And I found a bike for $750.
So if you place, some lower minimum in the legislation, then the way that we originally came to the $400 for lower income households and $250 for moderate income households was through analysis using a tool that was developed by Portland State University, which looked at what are the relative cost effectiveness of incentives for e-bikes versus plug-in electric vehicles. So what we would want to look at is making sure that, given the amount of money that we have, that the amounts are set at a reasonable amount that allows the program to be as cost effective as our incentive program for new PVs, so that the amount of reductions that we're expecting from it are the same or greater on a dollar per CO2 reduced basis.
So I don't have a clue what I would get for an incentive.
We would have fixed amounts, so it's not,
Yeah, okay.
it's not like people would come to it without understanding this is exactly what you would get. So we're imagining that we would continue the same amounts of $400 for that.
So the maximum incentive, if I have a 2,000, would $400
The maximum incentive, yeah,
is 400.
yes, right now,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
There may be, additional considerations for, say, a cargo bike, where the expectation is that there are more passenger miles being reduced.
But the incentive is the same whether I'm at 150% of poverty or 200%.
But because we're focusing with this language just on households with lower incomes, it's all going to be the same amount.
Okay, all right, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, sure.
What I remember of last year's conversations, there was originally $1 million in the budget for $200 incentives on e-bikes. And so I think that got pared back to 50,000. And we also, I think from that conversation, V-Trans was going to apply some income sensitization that had to be a proportional amount, which is what you're describing. So I don't remember talking about 400 and 250. I only remember the 200, but my only concern with that $800 threshold is that people were trying to help the most, to have an alternative, more environmentally friendly way to get to and from work. If they want to buy a $650 bike, I'm okay if they get, I thought it was just 200. This is the first time I heard about 400, but I don't have a concern if those really low income individuals tend to spend even less proportionally at the total bike. If there's a good bike for $650, where is my thinking wrong?
Well, you could just do no more than a 50% of whatever it might be.
They don't know what the price of the bike is when you issue the vouchers. That's your problem.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, the reality that we just see is that, a good, reliable electric bike is not going to be $650. Even though, it doesn't mean that the bike doesn't exist. But when you look at some of the issues that Senator Hirschlick has brought up, in terms of battery fires and other things, like you want these bikes to be safe and last for a long time.
So you're arguing that the 800 is needed. I think, I'm just trying to,
This house burns down.
well, we've taken care of that with your language.
It's not necessarily that 800 is needed, just that a minimum number is needed. And so that's up to the committee.
CT has done that, I'm sorry, Costco Tom.
I'm sorry to reference Costco, but maybe I'm getting in trouble because we're on YouTube, but are you implying that bikes being sold at national retailers are not safe, reliable?
No,
I feel like I'm defending Costco here, but I mean, is there a concern? Is that what you're
Certainly
like?
seem like it.
Yeah, I'm not as concerned with national retailers, but I'm concerned about those that aren't UL listed or I would assume that the Costco would be selling those ones, but I don't know.
Is there a connection with being UL listed with being a more expensive bike?
It's only a little bit. but-
So I would just add one further
There's a cost to
consideration,
UL.
one further consideration. Okay, so in the discussions with House Transportation, part of the idea behind creating this voucher system was also because 21% of the money in the first round went to local bike shops. The rest went to national retailers, like
Including online.
maybe not Costco, but to online retailers and others. So there was an interest both in terms of
supporting Vermont businesses.
supporting Vermont businesses, and it's unlikely that we would be signing Costco up as a business to this prepaid mobility card, which is what we would need to do to implement the voucher first system.
I want to be careful with that because my own experience is that every year I donate 10 bicycles to the Orleans County Fair. And so when I first started, I started at my local place and they had bicycles. And then, but over time, they don't do them anymore. And so I went to a local bike shop and I said to him, I said, listen, I just want to order 10 bicycles and helmets and all this and all that. And he, Russ, I just don't handle stuff like that. I don't. I said, well, just order me. He said, I can't even order me. He said, just Russ. And I persisted because he was a customer of mine and a friend of mine. And I said, listen, I'm not even really talking about cost. And he said, Russ, just go to Walmart and buy the bikes. I'm not going to be upset about that. So I just want to be careful about that. Some of these local shops just might not want to be handling the types of bikes that these retailers are willing to handle and sell successfully, and that they're going to do every bit of the job that what we're trying to do here is to get people on lesser incomes ways of different mode of transportation that they can contribute to climate change or the reduction of.
Well, still volunteer, like they can sign up or not sign up.
I feel like your safety language addresses the concern that this might be eligible for purchasing bad bikes. So I'm comfortable dropping the minimum, trusting that Senator Hirschlick's diligent research, which was probably not done late in the evening hours, it will catch that concern. But that's where I
So you would,
drop that $800 minimum and just trust that safe bikes are eligible.
I'm okay if we can have a discussion with us why they felt strongly.
you need something to negotiate.
Yeah, it makes the conversation.
Just want to make sure that folks that are on a lesser scale can feel like they're part of the process as far as being able to, and get the need of transportation, as we've heard over and over and over again, the steps to get out of poverty start with transportation.
Just for the record, Costco has not contributed to my campaign at any time.
Not yet.
You're trying, you're trying. You mentioned it one week, a few times.
Right. Has he mentioned UVM today?
No, not bad. We don't do so far. Don't do
You gotta
that.
call
Let's
it
talk.
bingo card.
Let's talk.
I think it's
What's the next section? Can we skip to the UVM section?
He wants to raise the president's salary, so.
And I've never been to a Costco.
No, pretty fun sometimes.
No.
Oh, yeah, Tom will give you a tour. He's like the David Sheets of Costco.
But we do still have a percentage, so I thought that was the way we had dealt with the minimum in the past, it's like. This
We don't
was-
know, I don't know if they have a percentage, that was what
So
I
we
was
don't
trying
have-
to figure
So
out.
you're giving them discretion. You're not saying one way or the other here.
But you could, your plan is to do that, or that's how you were dealing it with the,
What I'm saying is, so we put in a maximum percentage in response to your concerns.
right,
And that the way it's now worded makes it difficult to do that because we won't know what the ultimate bike price is going to be. So when you go to load money onto a prepaid mobility card, it needs to just be a fixed amount.
and that was the whole mobility card was proposed by the House, there's a different way of doing the incentive program, or?
If the system itself is not what's proposed by the House, it's the voucher system.
They
So
proposed it.
how we implement it is not,
Would you
it has
use-
not been proposed, but that's how we would have to.
Would you use the voucher system if there was no direction in the bill on how to do it, would you do the voucher system, or would you do it, or do you know?
Well, we didn't use the voucher system before, it wasn't set up. So it can be done without a voucher system, but
But you would prefer the voucher?
I think in order to make the language that is in there now work, we have to use it.
So if you think about the fact that you're now like self-attesting to certain things, you don't have, if any like retailer can just sort of give you your voucher, or you can buy the bike and get an after the fact reimbursement from the agency if you bought it online. There's not the like clearinghouse point where the agency of transportation or its contractor CSE doing this sort of vetting before someone's said, here you may now go and buy a bicycle. So it was and I can't speak for the intent behind it, but it was a decision made by House Transportation to say, you need to sort of be given permission to buy a bicycle from the agency or the administrator of the program before you can then go and take, they said voucher, it's going to be a prepaid mobility card, to a participating retail
Like,
establishment
How much
to then
money?
buy the bike.
Put $50,000?
$50,000 into program, and then
Seems like way too complicated for $50,000. So like all the other incentives that I deal with in the energy world, you sign up the retailer and you say, you get the customer, and when the customer comes through, they might be income eligible or eligible to process or not. We will pay the incentive to the vendor or on behalf of that customer. No cards, no real vouchers, they just go find a participating retailer or installer and then say, I want to install this, I want to buy the electric bike. They say, like, great, there's a state program, we can deduct this money off your bill, and then they would get the money from you.
And that's how it worked in the first iteration.
And the House didn't like that.
And there was a desire to, I mean, there's kind of some increased requirements here in terms of ensuring that it meets some sort of either UL listing or the EN European safety standards, and there's
Cynthia knows how to pronounce stuff.
self-attestation of other elements.
But you could still do
But
that.
it could be done fairly easily still, where you're just whitelisting businesses on within the system. And then you're able to track after the fact what's been, where it's been spent. and
If you go to
everything.
Efficiency Vermont's website and say like, I want to do this, they'll say like, okay, here are the people you can do it from. So you would just have all these bike shops, could be Costco, whoever wants to sign up to participate. And then they would have to make sure it's UL listed.
You wouldn't even need to sort of sign up to a bike shop or anything. So that card would be able to be used at.
I'm
any
saying
of the-
don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't use the card.
That's up to yourselves.
Yeah, I'm saying, you guys just designed the most efficient program you could think of for a $50,000.
I think what we're struggling with is, that's what the House did. But we're asking you, if we were for 50,000, is there a less costly, less complex way of getting the benefit out if you were given that flexibility? And so if you say, no, you like this mobility card, you think it's the most expeditious, et cetera, then that's one thing. But if you say, well, we think we could do it with some tweaks,
Yeah.
you know, like the way Andy's talking about, we're just trying to evaluate whether
Sure.
this prescribed method is in fact the most cost effective and simple.
I don't think it makes any difference to us.
Okay.
Because we could do either way. We've already done what you're describing. We can also do it this way. We have a system that's already set up.
But the way you did it before, you didn't pre-sign up the who, you just said the customer, go get the bike and we'll pay it to you, the customer.
Right.
My idea was a little different. It's like you sign up the businesses.
So just from a participant point of view, both in terms of the bike shops and those applying for a rebate, in this system that's described as a voucher, it is quicker because people are getting their money loaded onto a card. And they're not kind of having to, if they're getting a consumer rebate, they're not having to float that for however many.
Right, well, that's why I'm talking the system is they don't float it all, they just get it off.
Well, but then the bike shops too are getting their money instantly. Not instantly, you just heard earlier testimony that might be hold for a couple of
Well, that
days.
assumes the customer's got a debit or
Yeah.
credit card.
No, you're giving it, but you have to buy these cards and create that whole system. It seems.
That's already set up because we've got that for the Replace Your Ride program. We needed to set that up to be able to handle all of those other.
Okay, I guess if you already have it set up, then.
So it's not an increased cost or a concern about time. It could be more effective in getting, money into the hands of both the consumers and the bike shops more quickly.
Give it up, Andy.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Oh.
I'm giving it up.
So I'm gonna go back to like the very, very first question of House said between 800 and 4,000, you said between 0 and 4,000. Do you want to do something that's not 0 and not 800, like $600 or $500 or $700?
We don't have the percentage, but it's in the program rules.
So the way the program is set up, and I can put up the chart, is it said, Patrick, can you just explain the $800 and then it's 50% if it's under 800 and then.
Right.
So we just have a maximum percent.
So it's a maximum of 50% for households with lower incomes, a maximum of 30% for households with moderate incomes.
Say that again.
So it's
I'll put the chart up.
maximum incentive of 50% for households with lower incomes.
Uh-huh.
So $400 is the cap. If you had a $600 bike, you'd bring it up to
Yeah,
$300.
Okay,
Well, we said we were gonna take out the minimum. We know the percentage is in there.
yeah, so that,
And then we can talk to the House about why they thought $800 was the right minimum.
$800 million T-bill fails because of a $50 incentive.
Exactly. Too much time, time ran out.
I couldn't do it. Committee conference couldn't agree.
Right. We're getting home enough, $800 million.
Yeah, we got home.
Here's my proposal.
It sucks to be a Vermonter.
We don't have to talk about this.
Okay.
We're just gonna take out the $800 minimum and we'll talk to the House in conference. So what is the right number?
I don't
think that-
think it's a big deal if it's out altogether.
So if it's out altogether, that's fine, but if the House wants to explain why it's $800 and not some other number, those on the conference committee. I'm fine with that.
Michelle, don't tell the press what we did this morning.
That would be embarrassing. Green lights,
That's right, green lights.
Okay, so you're keeping your $4,000.
green lights and e-bikes.
I like that.
And then subdivision 6, you talked about, it's the two standards.
Oh, we like that.
So you've seen this language already, it's just highlighted because it's new to the
How
draft.
often do you get a umlaut? I should get credit.
I actually think that if it was in the green books, it would be difficult for them to print it.
Right. I was
Some
wondering if
symbols
editing was
throw it
gonna
up.
take it out.
For the record, you'll present this section.
I hope so.
In an earlier version, you had who received an incentive under the e-bike incentive program. This now says the demographics of who received an incentive under the e-bike incentive program. And editing just added some A's, which made sense. Oh no, that was because it was changed from A for all of them to the. You don't need to know about that. So it has your change about demographics, which was a committee request. And I think that'll take you to the end of your incentive programs. Okay.
If you get another email, just disregard it, okay?
I won't email it.
Okay.
Okay, mileage-based
You
user,
should write him back, go to bed.
Yeah. Get a light.
I will email it in the morning.
so there was some language in the intent section for the mileage-based user fee that you thought was a little bit more prescriptive than you wanted to be in the using the 1.75 as the calculator, the escalator for what the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles would be paying as their increased registration fee. So this instead is just saying that it's the intent of the General Assembly. This is at the top of page 43, lines 1 and 2, to start subjecting the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles that are a pleasure car to an increased annual or biannual registration fee starting on July 1, 2025. Not, it has to be, it's the intent that it be that 1.75. And then the other change that you made is in the authorization language where it said that they could get to up to a $3.5 million federal grant, and then there was a $350,000 non-federal match in state transportation fund dollars for the first year. And your concern as a committee was, well, what if the grant ends up being like $4 million and now the agency's precluded from accepting the grant?
Lips, don't I?
So this would not be including anything in terms of a cap for the federal grant that the agency can get. Still authorizing $350,000 in transportation fund monies for this fiscal year, and then saying that there would be a to be determined amount for the non-federal match in subsequent fiscal years.
Makes sense.
Yes, it's in draft 2.1. It's highlighted and ready to go. This was just before you caught.
Can you just remind me when the mileage base fee, that's July 1st, 2025?
Yeah, so we'll be back in next session with sort of the details on the calculation of the fee and how that's all gonna work, so you can approve the fee.
And so it would be possible to start it earlier if somebody wanted to, or do you think you need that much time to create it?
We're probably gonna need that much time to create it.
And they can't do it without the General Assembly saying.
Well, we'll
this
be,
now.
but like next year, if we wanted to say, okay, let's say, you come back with the, we could say like, start it in January of
I
2025.
see what you're saying, yeah.
We could do that.
We gotta study it.
Like you'd be able to, is what I'm saying, like administratively, we don't know.
Administratively, but they may be not technically.
I guess it's a question for Wanda.
It also depends, I think, on the timing of when we receive the grant, because the federal grant to implement.
Oh.
So
You are receiving or you applied?
we have not applied for it yet because there has not been yet a notice of funding opportunity, which we expected to happen a long time ago, but it still hasn't been issued. So that, the timing of from when we apply for the grant, when we receive it, when we're actually able to expend it, might sort of bump up against that January 2025.
Okay, just thinking about.
Thinking ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, how we doing?
I'm gonna continue to underscore because I think that it sometimes gets lost in the fact that you have a date in here saying like our intent is to do this on July 1, 2025. Like there's so many more steps that need to happen before it's actually a way that people are being assessed money that they have to pay. So that's then gonna take you through, there are no other changes until you get to section 27, and this is gonna be on the bottom of page 52. So if you'll remember, there are, in section 26, just backtracking a little bit to put 27 in context, a lot of requirements that the agency needs to do for purposes of the carbon reduction program and then the Protect Formula program. And this lays out, like, the agency needs to do X, they need to do Y, they need to do Z. And then section 27 is getting a report back on everything that you're requiring them to do in section 26. And in the earlier version of this language, it said a report on transportation, I think it said planning statutes. So this is shifting it to policy, which is a better descriptor for it. And you cut down what was a double reporting requirement where there's an interim draft in October, and then the final one in December. You now are just having a final report on or before January 15th of 2024. So there are no changes from what the House wanted in terms of what you're telling the agency to do in section 26. You're just having a technical correction on some language phrasing, and then taking what was a double reporting scheme to a single reporting scheme and
That was the
pushing it,
October date that we have.
and pushing it into a little bit into January as opposed to it being December.
Okay,
Okay, so then you've got your complete streets language. You talked about this yesterday. You're not gonna see it here. But this is where you're getting your change from database to a web accessible and web searchable data set source. Thank you. And then on page 59 will be the only other change to the complete streets language. In the version that left the House, it required that municipalities post the information related to decisions on whether or not complete streets principles would be followed. This, instead of requiring posting for the non-agency projects, just requires that they be made available for public inspection at the office of the municipal clerk in the case of a municipally managed project. That is existing statute, and I think it gives the municipalities the ability to just put it up online to avoid the making it available piece. It would certainly be available at the clerk's office if it's available on the internet.
Okay.
And that's it. That's your last change in the draft. You're gonna be having a
So
draft,
LY, that's right, you don't use a hyphen after LY.
Yeah. that's why it's state would be hyphen, but municipally would not.
LY municipally. If it were state managed, it would be, because it's no LY, unless it's a stately managed project.
Well, you want that municipality.
we're in the high weeds now.
Yeah.
We'll get poison ivy out of this one.
The phrasing that's usually
We're
a
in the
statute is
sugarcane
state
today.
or municipally, and I know that because I asked about the hyphen once before.
It's also, we had a debate about quotation marks, so if you're using like a colloquial term, I would normally have put in quotation marks and then a period. That was my old training, but now the quotation marks go outside any punctuation, so I just wanted to.
Right, you do the period then.
It's not at all punctuation.
Not all, but no,
Because like
period.
semicolons go outside.
And the kids these days aren't doing two spaces after a period. They're getting trained in high school, not.
Oh, no, yeah, that happened a few years ago.
I single space except in drafting when I have to double space because otherwise the editors fix it.
I can
All right.
say that the
But
kids
you get it,
did not
it's
take on penmanship at all. That's gone.
Oh, they can't.
Penmanship or writing letters, they
They don't
can't
write
add or
letters.
subtract, seriously. We go through time cards every week, and my wife goes right to the roof because they can't write the name, they can't read it. You can't add the time cards because, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, like, that now cursive writing is what
Yeah.
they don't have.
Can you type?
Well, look like high school kids.
If you type- Yeah, when I learned to type, it was always the double space, but that was because of.
It is, when you're doing Word documents, they require.
No more. They're not training them in school. You don't need.
And
to.
now, if you're doing a Word document, they'll underline it as a mistake.
Yeah.
Somebody submitted an application today, there's no way we could read that application.
It's a handwritten application.
Can't even imagine, I couldn't read the phone
Did
number.
they couldn't print? They couldn't even print?
Oh, no.
Normally they can print
All
cursively.
person, but you can't, nobody can figure it out. We had 3 people look at it.
No, you could call them back.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay, so what else we got today?
That's it for me. I have enough direction to get you draft 2.1.
And that will take care of everything then.
That'll take care of everything
Got
that
anything
we've
hanging out there?
discussed so far.
Other than what Anthea knows about, anything else hanging out?
There will potentially be an amendment that, would come from Senate Appropriations on Section 3. There also will need to be changes to the White Book, potentially, if there's any changes, other changes that Senate Appropriations makes in terms of funding source for things.
Does the Agency of Transportation have anything that we're forgetting, other than the green, blue light, the red?
Reading the language right now.
Oh, she is. Well, if you think of something, Michelle, that we have not
The
covered.
time's running out.
I have nothing more to add.
I want to do it the first of the week, we get.
Yeah,
I
let's
think we're there.
Uh-huh.
And I could just let the community know, at one point I was gonna work on an interlanguage on the driver's education training in Castleton and this thing in New Hampshire and all that, but we're just gonna do that next year. So,
If we want to talk about more things, the Harrison Amendment conversation is still.
Well,
open.
we already talked to her this morning, they're working that out.
I think they can do that outside of it.
Senator Lyons has caught me a few times over the session. She would love to see, I don't know if we had any presentations on this and what V-Trans is doing regarding how to operate safely on the bikeways with public service announcements. Like, are we spending money, like the old clicker tickets, but like
Well,
any.
that gets into our bike safety
Yeah.
initiative.
Yeah,
Tell her we've done it and more.
Yeah.
You know,
Why?
I wanna wrap this thing up.
That's
First
it.
week, do that, and then we get started on it. Then we'll have a chance to, I don't want any surprises at the last minute, find out we got something major we're gonna take up. So if you think of something, let's get it in Tuesday.
There's the only other thing that came up, but I wondered if we could do it as part of the budget with the refugee center. The helping refugees get driver's license, because they need even more support. We had the translation and all that for taking the
What you wanna
test.
say about that? You're talking about?
Can't that be done administratively?
Yeah, I think so. So I was just gonna maybe talk to Tracy Dolan and say it could be just part of what the services they're already offering. But there's there's 2 different refugee groups, and one group has been doing it, just kind of raising private funds to help. Basically having these, like refugee mothers do this course to get ready to take the test.
Do we know what the miscellaneous bill in the House, and if they've done a lot of changes, or what happened this year?
Well, they got rid of my unpaved roads, unsigned roads. They,
I don't know what they're doing with that. They had a
I think they-
very long conversation about it yesterday, and I was left not knowing what I
I
was
heard,
supposed to
the
read.
towing industry is all out now or something.
No, just, they got rid of the lead part of it.
but the 125 and.
Right, the 125
The
and the.
abandoned vehicle.
There might be a report on,
Oh, God, we love rewards.
the $16,000, whether or not with the changes and eliminating the $16,000 cap, if it's then being exorbitantly more than
You know
16,000.
something, they'd have to come back in budget adjustment. I just don't, if it can't be accommodated and it's an obligation, I was like, why do you, I don't know.
Well, that was one of the things they talked about yesterday. There might be the language, a modification of the language that Representative Shaw came and talked to you about hands-free use means not having the phone in your hand in any way. So that might be incorporated. There was a discussion yesterday about how to
How can it be hands-free and you still have it in your hands?
that's what people are saying. I'm not using my phone, I'm just holding my phone.
The police call
Oh,
them
my
over.
God, can you imagine that? I'm not using, I'm holding it. Jeez.
Oh,
Oh, my
and,
God.
it's right up there when Tom Koch saw somebody on the interstate practicing a trombone and driving. I mean, it's just incredible what you, So I'm not using it, I'm
Let me
just
tell you.
holding it.
This phone in your hand,
Is that like hands-free coffee?
Long.
I got a dozen teenagers working the store, and not one of them will put down that phone. They're bothered by a customer because they get that phone in their hand, like, oh, every policy possible. They're on that phone all the time, they're cashiering. They can't do it in that phone five minutes.
If they're cashiering.
Oh, yeah. They're just amazing. Just,
That's multitasking. Sure.
We
but so-
heard that from law enforcement. They would ticket somebody, but then they would challenge it in court saying, I wasn't using it. 'Cause
Yeah.
right now, the law is you can't use the phone.
Yeah,
Also,
and
now we have to say you can't hold it.
yeah. So there's language that's being worked on that with that. Law enforcement came in and testified in House Transportation this week, and it was interesting to hear like the questions that law enforcement asks. They say like, were you texting or were you looking at a video? And then they hope that the person then says like, yes, I was texting, or, and you know, one of the officers gave a story about how asked that question, were you texting or were you looking at a video? They're like, oh no, I was checking my email. It's like, ha, I caught you. You said you were using your phone. But if they say no, then
we have a
like, how are they
particular
gonna prove it?
senator in here, I don't know what county, some Northeast Kingdom, so I can't imagine he or she could drive from Montpelier there without the phone. Very, very
The
hard.
hands free.
Yeah, just the answer. Just a question. Okay,
Well, I would like to say
Well, on the
my
grounds it
phone
might
is in my
incriminate that
pocketbook in the
senator.
back.
He or she will remain silent.
He was talking about former Senator Rogers.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
No, he didn't have a phone.
Yeah.
His cord didn't go all the way.
Well, we've had a very good morning, I think. Got a lot done, so we're heading in the right direction. And I think we can make a lot of progress. First week, Tuesday, we should be able to do a lot of this and finalize it. Go for review and get it out on the floor, get it out of here.
Okay, I will get draft 2.1 to the editors today, and then hopefully I'll get it to you on Monday and can walk through it as early as.
Don't work
Tuesday.
Saturday or Sunday.
I will not.
That's an
Saturday.
order.
Don't answer your
I
phone.
don't-
Hey.
If some senator, if this room calls you Saturday or Sunday.
Yeah, outside of business hours ever.
I will continue to say this. I am fully capable of not responding. I chose to respond.
I did that same, you have emailed her.
Would you get a Costco membership for it?
And I'm like, why didn't you respond? And not only just respond, but like,
Pro in depth, and I don't know how she pulled that together. for
right,
2 minutes.
umlauts and everything.
I don't
Sure,
care.
it's-
All the work you do.
Let's set it-
We do get comp time for the hours that we work over.
So the other thing is, frankly, weekends for me are just about the only time I've got that's not scheduled from 8 in the morning till when I leave here. So
Right.
I oftentimes say, don't respond, but that's the only time I can actually have the time to write something. So just because we send it, we don't need, unless we say, I need it immediately, please take it.
I
So
understand.
you do
But you
it
didn't
when
need it
part of
immediately.
your
It
work.
was easier for me to respond.
You have a little one, right? So you're probably up anyway.
No, they were asleep. It was fine.
Because we've heard, and legitimately so, where some legislators have basically demanded immediate attention on an issue, on a
About that
weekend or
chairs.
on an evening. And maybe there are times that you would, but as a matter of routine practice, it's not fair to staff, so.
At least this is a bill that'll pass. I think they really don't like it when they want to do an amendment or change the wording on a bill that's
Dead.
they're not gonna go.
Well, that's true. Because we try to respect the fact that you've got personal and family demands.
Anything else, anybody in the room before we cut out this morning? Thank everybody for all the input.
And
Appreciate
it's
it.
gorgeous out there, right?